The first rays of dawn painted the Kansas sky crimson as Jack Merrick stumbled through the outskirts of Dodge City, his weathered boots kicking up dust with each labored step. Blood seeped through his torn shirt, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. In his arms, wrapped in a tattered blanket, lay the small, unconscious form of 8-year-old Lily Harper. Jack's steel-gray eyes darted nervously over his shoulder. The sound of approaching hoofbeats echoed in the distance. They were still coming. His grip tightened protectively around the child as he pushed forward, every muscle in his body screaming in protest. The abandoned wagon where he'd found her was now 3 miles behind them, but the danger was far from over. "Come on, little one," he whispered hoarsely to the unconscious girl. "We're almost there." Sheriff Ben Rourke was just stepping out of his office when he saw the lone figure approaching down Main Street. The lawman's hand instinctively moved to his gun belt, then froze as he recognized the familiar silhouette of Jack Merrick, the man most folks in Dodge City knew as a loner with nothing left to lose. But it wasn't Jack that made Rourke's jaw drop. It was what he carried. "Jesus Christ, Jack!" Rourke breathed as the former gunslinger collapsed to his knees right there in the street, still cradling the child. "What in God's name?" "She needs help," Jack gasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "Found her. In a wagon. Barely alive." Rourke knelt beside them, his experienced eyes taking in the scene. The girl's clothes were torn and dirty, her small face pale as porcelain. But it was what she clutched in her tiny fist that made the sheriff's blood run cold, a piece of paper with strange markings, drawn in what looked like charcoal. "Who is she?" Rourke asked, but Jack was already losing consciousness from blood loss and exhaustion. As the sheriff lifted Lily from Jack's arms, her eyes fluttered open for just a moment. In that brief instant, Rourke saw something that would haunt him for days to come, pure, unadulterated terror. The kind of fear that could only come from witnessing something no child should ever see. "Doc Morrison!" Rourke shouted toward the medical office. "Get over here now!" Flashback begins. 24 hours earlier. "Hi, how are you? Sorry to interrupt your story, but what I'm going to ask you is really quick and it will really help the channel to grow and create new stories. Just click below the video image to subscribe. You'll be doing an act of kindness and encouragement to those who are just starting out. Thank you very much, and continue with your story." The sun was setting over the endless Kansas prairie when Jack Merrick first spotted the abandoned wagon. He'd been riding the outskirts of Dodge City for hours, as was his daily routine, a man with nowhere to go and no one waiting for him. The wagon sat crooked near a cluster of cottonwood trees, one wheel broken, its canvas cover flapping in the evening breeze. Jack had learned long ago to mind his own business. In his 43 years, the last 15 spent as a drifter, he'd seen enough trouble to last 3 lifetimes. But something about the scene felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. He dismounted his horse, a sturdy bay mare named Sarah, the only companion he'd had for the past 5 years. His hand rested on the grip of his Colt .45 as he approached the wagon cautiously. "Hello?" he called out. "Anyone there?" Silence. The wagon's contents were scattered. Clothes, supplies, and what looked like the remnants of a family's belongings. But no bodies, no blood, just emptiness. That's when he heard it. A soft whimpering, barely audible above the wind. Jack's heart, which he'd thought had turned to stone years ago, suddenly began to race. He followed the sound to the back of the wagon where a pile of blankets lay in a heap. Carefully, he pulled them aside. What he found changed everything. Lily Harper, though he didn't know her name yet, lay curled in a ball, her small body shaking with fever and fear. Her dark hair was matted with dirt, and her dress was torn in several places. But she was alive. "Hey there, little one," Jack said softly, his voice gentler than it had been in years. "You're safe now." The girl's eyes opened, large, brown, and filled with a terror that made Jack's chest tighten. She tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper emerged. My family." Jack looked around the wagon again, this time with new eyes. Now he could see the signs he'd missed before, scuff marks in the dirt indicating a struggle. personal items that had been deliberately scattered, not just fallen, and most telling of all, the absence of the horses that should have been pulling the wagon. This wasn't an accident. This was something far worse. "Where are they, sweetheart?" Jack asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Lily's small hand reached out, clutching a piece of paper she'd been hiding beneath her body. With trembling fingers, she pressed it into Jack's palm. The drawing was crude but unmistakable. Stick figures of a man, woman, and child, with dark marks that could only represent one thing: death. Jack's blood ran cold as he studied the drawing more closely. In the corner, barely visible, were symbols he didn't recognize. But one thing was clear: this little girl had witnessed something terrible, and whoever was responsible might still be out there. "Listen to me," Jack said, his voice firm but kind. "I'm going to get you out of here. My name's Jack. What's yours?" "Lily," she whispered. "Lily Harper." "Well, Miss Lily Harper, you're going to be just fine. I promise." As Jack lifted the child from the wagon, wrapping her in his own coat, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. For the first time in 15 years, Jack Merrick had something to fight for. But as they prepared to leave, the sound of approaching riders echoed across the prairie. Jack's blood turned to ice as he recognized the voices carrying on the wind, rough, dangerous men who clearly weren't there to help. "Search every inch," a gruff voice commanded. "The girl couldn't have gone far." Jack's mind raced. These weren't random bandits. They were looking specifically for Lily, which meant whatever had happened to her family wasn't random either. It was planned, calculated, and now they were coming to finish what they'd started. With Lily in his arms, Jack moved as quickly and quietly as he could toward his horse. But the child was weak from exposure and fear, and their progress was painfully slow. The riders were getting closer. "Please," Lily whispered, her small hand gripping Jack's shirt. "Don't let them find me." Looking down at her terrified face, Jack felt something stir in his chest, something he thought had died along with his own family all those years ago. Purpose. Determination, the fierce, protective instinct of a man who'd found his reason to live. "They won't," he promised, his voice steel. "Not while I'm breathing." As the first shots rang out behind them, Jack spurred his horse forward into the gathering darkness. Lily clutched safely against his chest. Behind them, angry shouts filled the night air as their pursuers realized their quarry had escaped. But Jack knew this was far from over. Whoever wanted Lily dead had resources, manpower, and a ruthless determination that matched his own. The question was, why? What had this innocent child seen that was worth killing for? As they rode through the night toward Dodge City, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was riding straight into the biggest fight of his life. But for the first time in 15 years, he had something worth fighting for. The drawing in Lily's small fist held secrets that someone was willing to kill to protect. And Jack Merrick, the man with nothing to lose, was about to discover that sometimes having something to protect was the most dangerous thing of all. The mystery deepens as Jack and Sheriff Rourke uncover the truth about Lily's family and the powerful forces that want her silenced forever. Dr. Morrison's hands worked with practiced efficiency as he examined the unconscious child on his examination table. Sheriff Rourke stood in the corner, his weathered face etched with concern, while Jack sat slumped in a chair nearby, his own wounds freshly bandaged. "She's malnourished and dehydrated," Dr. Morrison reported, his voice grim. "But physically she'll recover. It's the psychological trauma I'm worried about. This child has seen something terrible." Jack's jaw tightened as he watched Lily's small chest rise and fall with each labored breath. "Any idea who she is, Doc?" "Never seen her before," Morrison replied, cleaning his hands. "But that doesn't mean much. Lots of families pass through Dodge City without staying long." Sheriff Rourke stepped forward, the cryptic drawing still clutched in his hand. "Jack, I need to know everything. Where exactly did you find her?" Before Jack could answer, the door to the medical office burst open. Elias Crowell, Dodge City's most influential land baron, strode in with the confidence of a man who owned half the territory. His expensive suit and polished boots stood in stark contrast to the dusty, blood-stained men around him. "Sheriff Rourke," Crowell's voice was smooth as silk, but Jack caught the underlying tension. I heard there was some excitement this morning. A child found abandoned. Rourke's eyes narrowed slightly. News travels fast, Mr. Crowell, especially considering it just happened an hour ago. Crowell's smile never wavered, but Jack noticed how his gaze lingered on the unconscious girl. In a town this size, Sheriff, everything travels fast. I simply wanted to offer my assistance. Perhaps the child could be cared for at my ranch until her family is located. That's generous, Rourke replied carefully, but she's staying here under medical supervision. For just a moment, Crowell's mask slipped, and Jack saw something cold and calculating flash in the man's eyes. Of course, though I do hope you'll keep me informed of any developments. After Crowell left, an uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Jack stood slowly, his body protesting every movement. That man knows more than he's saying, Jack said quietly. Rourke nodded grimly. Elias Crowell knows more about everything in this county than he lets on. Question is, what's his interest in one little girl? Dr. Morrison looked up from his notes. There's something else. When I was cleaning her up, I found this sewn into the lining of her dress. He held up a small leather pouch. Looks like it was hidden deliberately. Jack took the pouch with trembling hands. Inside were several items that made his blood run cold. A photograph of a family, man, woman, and the girl now lying unconscious before them. But it was the other items that truly chilled him. A deed to a substantial piece of land outside Dodge City, and a letter bearing an official seal. Property survey and mineral rights assessment, Rourke read over Jack's shoulder. Significant silver deposits confirmed on Harper family land. The pieces began falling into place with sickening clarity. Jack's hands clenched into fists as the implications hit him. Her family wasn't killed by random bandits, Jack said, his voice barely controlled. They were murdered for their land. Rourke's face darkened. Land that someone knew contained silver, someone with the resources to conduct surveys and the connections to keep it quiet. Someone like Elias Crowell, Jack finished. A soft moan from the examination table drew their attention. Lily's eyes fluttered open, immediately filling with panic as she took in the unfamiliar surroundings. It's okay, sweetheart, Jack said gently, moving to her side. You're safe. Remember me? I'm Jack. Recognition dawned in her eyes, followed by relief, but when she tried to speak, only a hoarse whisper emerged. They killed them, she managed. Mama and Papa, they killed them. Jack's heart clenched as he took her small hand in his. Can you tell us who, Lily? Who did this to your family? Lily's eyes darted nervously around the room before settling on Jack's face. Bad men. They came at night. Said Papa had something they wanted. When Papa said no, she couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Did you recognize any of them? Rourke asked gently. Lily shook her head, then paused. There was a man, a fancy man who came before the bad men. He talked to Papa about selling our land. Papa said no. The fancy man got angry. Jack and Rourke exchanged meaningful glances. Can you describe this fancy man, Lily? He had a shiny watch, she whispered. And he smelled like flowers. Mama said it was expensive cologne. Jack's jaw tightened. He'd noticed Crowell's expensive cologne when the man had entered the medical office. Lily, Jack said carefully, the drawing you made, can you tell us about those symbols in the corner? The little girl's face went pale. Papa taught me to write them. He said they were important. They're the marks on our land papers. Papa said they proved the land was ours. Rourke studied the drawing more closely. Survey markers. She copied the official survey markers from her family's property deed. Which means, Jack said grimly, she's the only living witness to her family's legal claim to that land. The full horror of the situation settled over them. Lily wasn't just a witness to murder. She was the only thing standing between Elias Crowell and a fortune in silver. We need to get her out of Dodge City, Jack said. Tonight? Where? Rourke asked. Crowell has influence all over this territory. And if he's willing to kill an entire family, then he won't hesitate to kill a little girl, Jack finished. Dr. Morrison looked up from his examination. There's something else. I found traces of laudanum in her system. Someone drugged her, probably to keep her quiet during whatever happened to her family. Jack's hands clenched into fists. The cold, calculated nature of the crime was becoming clearer with each revelation. This wasn't a crime of passion or desperation. It was a carefully planned execution designed to look like a random attack. "Sheriff," a voice called from outside. "Sheriff Rourke." Deputy Tom Bradley burst through the door, his face flushed with exertion. "Sheriff, we got trouble. Caleb Stone and his gang just rode into town. They're asking questions about a little girl." Jack's blood turned to ice. Caleb Stone was one of the most dangerous outlaws in Kansas, a man who killed for money and enjoyed his work. "How many men?" Rourke asked, already reaching for his gun belt. "6, maybe 7. They're armed to the teeth and asking real specific questions. They know about the girl, Sheriff." Jack stood, ignoring the pain in his wounded arm. "They're Crowell's men. Has to be." Rourke nodded grimly. "Tom, I want you to ride out to the widow Peterson's place. Tell her we need a safe place for a child, and we need it now." "What about Stone?" Bradley asked. "Leave Stone to us," Jack said, checking his Colt .45. "But first, we need to get Lily out of here." Dr. Morrison wrapped Lily in a warm blanket. "She's not strong enough for a hard ride." "She'll have to be," Jack said softly, then knelt beside the examination table. "Lily, sweetheart, we need to go on another adventure. Can you be brave for me?" The little girl nodded, though fear still clouded her eyes. "Will you stay with me?" "Every step of the way," Jack promised. As they prepared to leave, Rourke pulled Jack aside. "You know this is suicide, right? Going up against Crowell and his hired guns?" Jack looked back at Lily, so small and vulnerable, yet carrying the weight of such terrible knowledge. "Maybe, but I've been dead inside for 15 years anyway. At least this way, my life might mean something." "What happened 15 years ago, Jack? What made you the man with nothing to lose?" Jack's face hardened. "My wife and daughter were killed by men just like Stone. Men hired by someone who wanted something I had. I was too late to save them then." He looked back at Lily. "I won't be too late this time." The sound of approaching horses echoed through the streets of Dodge City. Through the window, they could see Caleb Stone and his men dismounting in front of the saloon, their eyes already scanning the street with predatory intent. "Time to go," Rourke said. As they prepared to slip out the back of the medical office, Lily tugged on Jack's shirt. "Mr. Jack, the bad men, they said something about a lady who would help them." Jack and Rourke froze. "What lady, sweetheart?" "I don't know her name, but she had red hair and wore a green dress. She was with the fancy man when he came to see Papa." Jack's mind raced. A woman working with Crowell? In Dodge City, there was only one woman with that description who moved in Crowell's circles. "Mariah Lane," Rourke whispered. Jack's world tilted. Mariah Lane, the tough-willed rancher he'd begun to trust, the woman who'd shown him kindness when the rest of the town treated him like a pariah. "It can't be," Jack said. But even as he spoke, pieces of a larger puzzle began falling into place. The sound of boots on the wooden sidewalk outside grew closer. Stone and his men were beginning their search. "We'll figure out who we can trust later," Rourke said grimly. "Right now, we just need to survive the night." As they slipped out into the gathering darkness, Lily clutched tightly to Jack's hand. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the betrayals were just beginning. In a town where silver meant more than life, and where even apparent allies might be enemies, the only thing he could trust was his own determination to protect the innocent child who'd already lost everything. Behind them, the sound of doors being kicked in echoed through the night. The hunt had begun. As Jack and Lily flee into the night, shocking betrayals and unexpected alliances reshape everything they thought they knew about Dodge City's power structure. The abandoned mine shaft 3 miles outside Dodge City had been Jack's refuge for the past 2 hours. Hidden behind a curtain of overgrown brush and fallen timber, it provided the perfect vantage point to watch the town while keeping Lily safe. But as dawn approached, Jack knew their time was running out. Lily slept fitfully against his shoulder, her small body still trembling from exhaustion and trauma. Every few minutes, she would whimper in her sleep, reliving the horrors she'd witnessed. Jack's heart ached for her, but his mind remained focused on survival. The sound of approaching horses made him tense. Through the brush, he could see two riders approaching, Sheriff Rourke and, to his surprise, Mariah Lane. Jack's hand moved instinctively to his gun. After Lily's revelation about the red-haired woman in the green dress, he wasn't sure who to trust anymore. "Jack!" Rourke called out softly. "We know you're here. We need to talk." Mariah dismounted, her auburn hair catching the first rays of sunlight. She wore practical riding clothes, not the green dress Lily had described, but that meant nothing. Jack had learned long ago that people could change their appearance as easily as they changed their loyalties. "How do I know this isn't a trap?" Jack called back, his voice echoing slightly from the mine shaft. "Because if it was," Mariah replied, "Caleb Stone and his men would already be here instead of us." Jack considered this. After a moment, he emerged from the mine shaft, Lily still in his arms, his gun drawn but not aimed. "Talk fast," he said. Rourke stepped forward, his face grim. "Stone tore the town apart looking for you last night. When he couldn't find you, he went straight to Crowell's ranch. They're planning something big for this morning." "How do you know?" Jack asked, his eyes never leaving Mariah. "Because I was there," Mariah said quietly. "Jack, I know what Lily told you about a red-haired woman. I need you to know, it wasn't me." Jack's grip tightened on his gun. "Prove it." Mariah reached slowly into her saddlebag and pulled out a photograph. "This is my sister, Catherine. She's been working as Crowell's companion for the past 6 months. I've been trying to get information about his business dealings through her." Jack studied the photograph. The woman in the image looked remarkably similar to Mariah, but her face held a hardness that Mariah's lacked. "Catherine's been feeding me information about Crowell's land acquisitions," Mariah continued. "She told me about the Harper family 3 days ago. I tried to warn them, but—" "You were too late," Jack finished. "We all were," Rourke said grimly. "But we're not too late to stop Crowell from getting away with it." Lily stirred in Jack's arms, her eyes opening slowly. When she saw Mariah, she pressed closer to Jack, fear evident in her expression. "It's okay, sweetheart," Jack said gently. "This is Mariah. She's here to help us." "She looks like the bad lady," Lily whispered. Mariah knelt down to Lily's eye level, her voice soft and reassuring. "I know I do, honey. The bad lady is my sister, but I promise you, I'm nothing like her. I want to help you and Mr. Jack." Lily studied Mariah's face carefully, then looked up at Jack. "Do you trust her?" Jack met Mariah's eyes, searching for any sign of deception. What he saw there was genuine concern and determination, emotions that couldn't be easily faked. "I'm learning to," he said finally. Rourke stepped closer, his voice urgent. "We don't have much time. Crowell's planning to leave Dodge City this morning with a wagon train headed for Denver. If he gets away with those land deeds, he'll be untouchable," Jack finished, "and Lily will never be safe." "There's more," Mariah said. "Catherine overheard Crowell talking to Stone last night. They're not just planning to leave, they're planning to stage one final attack on the town. Make it look like a random outlaw raid while they escape with the silver claims." Jack's blood ran cold. "How many innocent people will die?" "As many as it takes to cover their tracks," Rourke said grimly. Lily tugged on Jack's shirt. "Mr. Jack? What about the other papers?" "What other papers, sweetheart? Papa had more papers. Hidden ones. He showed me where he kept them before the bad men came." Jack's heart raced. "Where, Lily? Where did your papa hide them?" "In the old oak tree by our house. There's a hollow spot. Papa said if anything ever happened, I should tell someone good about the papers." Mariah and Rourke exchanged glances. "If there are more documents," Mariah said, "they could be the evidence we need to expose Crowell." "It's a trap," Jack said immediately. "Crowell's men will be watching the Harper place." "Maybe," Rourke agreed. "But it's also our only chance to get the evidence we need to stop him legally." Jack looked down at Lily, then back at his unlikely allies. "What are you proposing?" "A trade," Mariah said. Catherine's been trying to find a way out of Crowell's organization for months. She's terrified of him, but she's also the only one who knows all his plans. If we can get her away from him, she could testify against him, Rourke finished. And in exchange, we help her disappear. New identity, safe passage out of Kansas. It's what she's wanted all along. Jack considered the plan. It was risky, but it was also their best chance of ending this nightmare permanently. "What about Lily?" he asked. "She stays with me," Mariah said firmly. "My ranch is defensible and I have men I trust. She'll be safe while you and Ben handle Crowell." Lily looked up at Jack with wide, trusting eyes. "Will you come back?" Jack knelt down to her level, his voice gentle but firm. "I promise you, sweetheart, I will come back, and when I do, the bad men will never be able to hurt you again." As they prepared to part ways, Rourke pulled Jack aside. "There's something else you should know. I did some checking on Caleb Stone. He's not just any hired gun. He's the same man who killed your family 15 years ago." Jack's world stopped. The blood drained from his face as memories he'd tried to bury came flooding back. His wife, Sarah, his daughter, Emma, the flames, the screams, the man with the scar across his left cheek who'd stood watching it all burn. "You're sure?" Jack's voice was barely a whisper. "Positive. Same description, same methods. He's been working for powerful men his whole career doing their dirty work." Jack's hands began to shake, not with fear, but with a rage he'd kept buried for 15 years. "Then this isn't just about saving Lily anymore." "Jack," Rourke warned, "don't let revenge cloud your judgment. Lily needs you thinking clearly." Jack looked over at the little girl, now talking quietly with Mariah by the horses. In her innocent face, he saw echoes of his own daughter, the child he'd failed to protect all those years ago. "This isn't about revenge," Jack said quietly. "This is about justice. For Lily's family, for my family, for everyone Stone and men like Crowell have destroyed." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the Kansas prairie, the unlikely alliance prepared for what would be the most dangerous day of their lives. Jack would ride with Rourke to the Harper homestead to retrieve the hidden documents. Mariah would take Lily to safety and attempt to contact her sister. But as Jack mounted his horse, Lily ran to him one last time. "Mr. Jack," she said, pressing something into his hand. "Papa gave this to me. He said it would keep me safe." Jack looked down at the small object in his palm, a simple silver locket with the initial H engraved on the front. Inside was a tiny photograph of Lily with her parents, all of them smiling and happy. "He was right," Jack said, closing the locket and putting it in his vest pocket, right over his heart. "It did keep you safe. It brought you to me." As they rode away in different directions, each carrying the weight of their desperate plan, none of them noticed the lone rider watching from a distant ridge. Caleb Stone lowered his spyglass, a cruel smile spreading across his scarred face. The game was about to begin, and Stone held more cards than any of them realized. But Jack Merrick, the man who'd lost everything once before, was no longer the broken drifter who'd wandered into Dodge City. He was a man with purpose, with something to protect, and with 15 years of buried rage finally finding its target. The final confrontation was coming, and this time, Jack wouldn't be too late. All secrets are revealed as Jack faces his past and fights for Lily's future in a climactic showdown that will determine the fate of everyone in Dodge City. The Harper homestead stood like a monument to tragedy in the morning light. The burned remains of the house still smoldered, and the acrid smell of smoke hung heavy in the air. Jack and Sheriff Rourke approached cautiously, their eyes scanning for any sign of Caleb Stone's men. "There," Jack pointed to the massive oak tree that stood about 50 yards from the ruined house. "That must be where Lily's father hid the documents." As they dismounted, Rourke grabbed Jack's arm. "Something's wrong. It's too quiet." Jack nodded, his hand moving instinctively to his gun. "Stone's here somewhere. I can feel it." They approached the oak tree with weapons drawn. The hollow Lily had described was about 6 feet up the trunk, hidden behind a loose piece of bark. Jack reached inside and felt his fingers close around an oilskin packet. "Got them," he whispered. That's when the applause began. "Well done, gentlemen. Truly impressive." Elias Crowell stepped out from behind the tree, flanked by 6 armed men. But it was the figure beside him that made Jack's blood run cold. Caleb Stone, his scarred face twisted into a cruel grin. "Mr. Merrick," Crowell said smoothly, "you've saved us considerable trouble. Those documents you're holding are the last pieces of evidence that could complicate my business arrangements." "Your business arrangements?" Rourke spat. "You mean murder and theft?" Crowell shrugged elegantly. "I prefer to think of it as aggressive land acquisition. The Harper family was simply uncooperative." Stone stepped forward, his eyes locked on Jack. 15 years, Merrick. 15 long years I've been wondering if you'd ever grow a backbone and come looking for me." Jack's world narrowed to the scarred face before him. "You remember?" "Remember?" Stone laughed. "How could I forget? Your wife was quite the fighter. And your little girl, what was her name? Emma? She kept crying for her daddy right up until the end." The rage that had been building in Jack for 15 years finally erupted. With a roar of fury, he lunged at Stone, but 2 of Crowell's men grabbed him before he could reach his target. Now, Crowell said calmly. "Let's not be hasty. Mr. Stone, while I appreciate your personal interest in Mr. Merrick, we have business to conclude." "Where's the girl?" Stone demanded. "Safe," Jack snarled. "Somewhere you'll never find her." Crowell smiled coldly. "Actually, I think we will. You see, my dear Catherine has been quite helpful in that regard." Jack's heart sank as he saw Mariah being dragged into the clearing by 2 more men. Her hands were bound, and there was blood on her lip, but her eyes blazed with defiance. "I'm sorry, Jack," she called out. "Catherine betrayed us. She told Crowell everything." "Where's Lily?" Jack demanded. "Still safe," Mariah replied. "But not for long if we don't—" Stone backhanded her across the face, cutting off her words. "Shut up, woman." Jack struggled against his captors, but their grip was iron. "I'll kill you, Stone. I swear to God, I'll kill you." "You'll try," Stone replied. "Just like you tried to save your family. How'd that work out for you?" Crowell stepped forward, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Enough. Mr. Merrick, you're going to tell us where the child is, or we're going to start killing your friends, beginning with the lovely Miss Lane." "Go to hell," Jack spat. Crowell nodded to one of his men who drew his gun and pointed it at Mariah's head. "Wait!" Rourke shouted. "I'll tell you where she is." "Ben, no," Jack warned. "She's at the old mining camp," Rourke said quickly. 5 miles north of town. There's a cabin there." Crowell smiled. "Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Stone, take half the men and retrieve our young witness. Kill anyone who gets in your way." As Stone mounted his horse, he looked back at Jack. "Don't worry, Merrick. I'll make sure the girl dies quick. Professional courtesy." Jack watched in helpless rage as Stone and 3 men rode away toward what he prayed was a false location. But his hope was short-lived when he saw the satisfied look on Crowell's face. "You really think I'd trust the word of a desperate lawman?" Crowell chuckled. "My men have been watching Miss Lane's ranch since dawn. The child is there, and Stone knows exactly where to find her." Jack's heart stopped. Lily was in mortal danger, and he was trapped here, helpless to save her. That's when the shooting started. The first shot came from the ridge overlooking the homestead, taking down one of Crowell's men instantly. The second shot came from behind the burned house, dropping another. "What the hell?" Crowell began, but his words were cut off as more gunfire erupted from multiple positions around the clearing. In the chaos that followed, Jack broke free from his captors and dove for cover behind the oak tree. Rourke rolled behind a fallen log, drawing his gun and returning fire. Mariah, still bound, managed to crawl to safety behind the stone foundation of the burned house. "Who's shooting at us?" one of Crowell's men shouted. The answer came in the form of a familiar voice calling out from the ridge. "This is Deputy Bradley. You're surrounded. Throw down your weapons." Jack's heart soared. Somehow the cavalry had arrived, but Crowell wasn't finished. Pulling a derringer from his vest, he grabbed Mariah and pressed the gun to her temple. "Enough!" he shouted. "Everyone stop shooting or the woman dies!" The gunfire ceased. In the sudden silence, Crowell's voice carried clearly across the clearing. "Mr. Merrick, I know you can hear me. You have 30 seconds to surrender yourself, or Miss Lane pays the price for your heroics." Jack closed his eyes, his mind racing. He could hear horses approaching, Stone returning with his men, probably with terrible news about Lily. Everything he'd fought for, everyone he'd tried to protect, was slipping away. Then he remembered the locket Lily had given him. He pulled it from his vest pocket and opened it, looking at the photograph of the happy family that no longer existed. But in Lily's smiling face, he saw something that gave him strength, hope. "I'm coming out," Jack called. "Jack, no!" Rourke shouted. But Jack was already moving, his hands raised, walking slowly toward Crowell and Mariah. "That's better," Crowell said. "Now where are those documents?" Jack reached slowly into his coat and pulled out the oilskin packet. "Right here. Toss them over." Jack threw the packet at Crowell's feet. As the land baron bent to retrieve them, Jack made his move. In one fluid motion, he drew his gun and fired. The bullet caught Crowell in the shoulder, spinning him around and causing him to release Mariah. She rolled away as Jack dove for cover, but Crowell's remaining men were already firing. Jack felt a bullet graze his ribs, then another shatter the bark of the tree beside his head. That's when he heard the most beautiful sound in the world, Lily's voice, calling his name. "Mr. Jack! Mr. Jack!" He looked up to see the little girl running toward him across the clearing, tears streaming down her face. Behind her, Deputy Bradley and several townsmen were advancing with guns drawn. "Lily!" Jack shouted. "Get down!" But the child kept running, and Jack realized with horror that she was running straight into the line of fire. Without thinking, he broke from cover and sprinted toward her. The world seemed to move in slow motion. Jack could see Crowell raising his derringer, aiming not at him, but at Lily. He could see the cruel smile on the land baron's face as his finger tightened on the trigger. Jack reached Lily just as the gun fired. He swept her up in his arms and spun around, putting his body between her and the bullet. The impact felt like being kicked by a horse. Jack stumbled and fell, Lily still clutched protectively in his arms. He could feel warmth spreading across his back, but all that mattered was that Lily was safe. "Mr. Jack!" Lily cried, her small hands touching his face. "Don't leave me! Please don't leave me!" "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart," Jack whispered, though he could feel his strength ebbing away. "I promised, remember?" The sound of gunfire continued around them, but it seemed distant now. Jack was aware of Rourke and the deputies finishing off Kroll's men, of Mariah kneeling beside them with tears in her eyes, of Dr. Morrison arriving with his medical bag. But most of all, he was aware of Lily's small hand in his, holding on tight. "The bad men are gone," she whispered. "You saved me." "No, sweetheart," Jack replied, his voice growing weaker. "You saved me." As consciousness began to fade, Jack felt a peace he hadn't known in 15 years. He'd kept his promise. He'd protected the innocent. He'd found his redemption. But Lily's voice, strong and determined, pulled him back from the darkness. "You can't die, Mr. Jack. I need you. We're family now." Family. The word hit Jack like a lightning bolt. He thought of his wife and daughter, gone but not forgotten. He thought of the empty years that had followed, and he thought of the little girl whose love had brought him back to life. With tremendous effort, Jack opened his eyes and looked into Lily's face. "You're right," he whispered. "We are family." 6 months later, Jack Merrick stood on the porch of his new home, watching Lily play in the yard with the puppy Mariah had given her for her 9th birthday. His shoulder still ached where Crowell's bullet had torn through muscle and bone, but Dr. Morrison said he'd make a full recovery. Caleb Stone had been captured trying to flee to Mexico. He would hang for his crimes, finally paying for the lives he'd destroyed. The silver mine on the Harper land had made Lily one of the wealthiest children in Kansas, but more importantly, she had a family again. Mariah approached from the barn, her red hair catching the afternoon sunlight. "Dinner's ready," she said, slipping her arm through his. Jack smiled, watching Lily chase the puppy around the oak tree they'd planted in memory of her parents. The little girl who'd lost everything had given him back his life, and in return, he'd given her something precious, the promise that she would never be alone again. In the distance, the sun was setting over the Kansas prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was the end of another day, but for Jack Merrick and his new family, it was really just the beginning. The lonely cowboy had found his way home at last. Hello, how are you? Did you enjoy the story? Like, share, comment on which city you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel to help us continue adding new amazing videos. Thank you very much and come back often.